Discover the incredible journey. A cleaner promises to transform a millionaire's life in 30 days. Sarah wiped the last streak off the mahogany counter, her body aching from the weight of the day. She glanced at her watch, 3:02 p.m. Another 30 minutes and she could race through the storm back to her children, but for now, the pristine home of a wealthy family loomed around her like a gilded cage. As she scrubbed, doubt gnawed at her, a familiar, unrelenting feeling. Could she keep this up? The cleaning jobs barely covered rent, and her pantry shelves were becoming increasingly bare. The strength it took to pull through each day sometimes felt like it was slipping from her grasp. Meanwhile, Jackson Morgan, standing awkwardly in his own living room, was a stark contrast to the elegantly decorated space around him. Once a corporate giant, now a half-suited ghost of a man, he swiped a hand through his unkempt hair, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. With each tick of the clock, memories of his estranged father's scathing remarks replayed in his mind like a relentless loop. "You'll never make it on your own," echoed ominously, exacerbating the heaviness in his chest. He was at a crossroads without a guiding light and drowning under the weight of expectations. The pressure to reunite with a family that devalued authenticity was suffocating. As Sarah caught a glimpse of Jackson's reflection in the polished surface, something shifted. He didn't look like a millionaire, he looked lost. An impulsive thought pierced through her fatigue: maybe she could help him. As she discovered a surprising resolve to bridge their disparate worlds, the notion ignited within her a 30-day challenge, one where she could aid in transforming his life as a way of preserving her own. Sure, it was absurd. What did she know about the realm of corporate giants? Yet, something in her gut told her that perhaps, just perhaps, they could elevate one another. A flicker of hope ignited, just as her children's faces swam back into focus, smiling, needing her to be strong. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jackson stared at her, skepticism oozing from his every pore. What could I possibly gain from a cleaner, he muttered, more to himself than her, but her unwavering gaze held him captive. Their conversations morphed into heated debates, privilege versus hardship, authenticity versus expectation. Each encounter chipped away at Jackson's preconceived notions, while entrenching Sarah deeper into her own internal battle. The determination she exhibited faltered when weighed against her fear of being dismissed. What if he couldn't respect her insights? Miscommunication began weaving its dark web. One moment, Jackson's frustrations flared like fire, and the next, Sarah's heart sank under the weight of his words. Had she dared to truly believe they could bridge that chasm? In anger, he tossed aside her wisdom, and her heart clenched. This could have been a friendship built on respect, but it felt shattered. She wrestled against the despair coiling around her thoughts, wondering if the sacrifice was worth it. She believed in him, their connection, however fragile, a lifeline in their relentless storms. As tumultuous emotions wrapped around her heart, Sarah faced the ragged boundary between hope and despair, standing poised at the brink of uncertainty. They needed to confront their fears head-on, but as the 30 days licked away like a candle's flame, their futures hung in precarious balance. Would Jackson find solace in authenticity, or would he fall victim once more to the relentless demands of an oppressive legacy? The tension left Sarah wrestling with the haunting question, what if she ultimately had to let go of the one person who could help her reclaim her worth? The storm raged outside, raindrops slapping against the windows like urgent whispers. In the quiet of Jackson's home, a suffocating tension persisted, reminiscent of the rolling clouds blocking out the sun. Sarah stood in the kitchen, the scent of wood polish mingling with the damp air. Her fingers moved mechanically as she returned to her ritualistic cleaning, but her mind churned with uncertainty. The thought of Jackson's skepticism lingered like a shadow, a dark reminder of her own doubts. Why am I even doing this? She muttered under her breath, scrubbing more vigorously as if to erase her apprehensions from the counter. She had entered this arrangement with conviction, hoping to foster change in both their lives. Yet, now, the weight of his dismissive words pressed down on her spirit. Jackson's towering presence seemed to silently mock her ambition. Across the room, Jackson sat hunched on the couch, letting the silence swell between them. He replayed their conversations in his mind, desperately seeking clarity amidst the noise of his turmoil. His feelings toward Sarah oscillated wildly, a blend of annoyance at her intrusion and an unshakable recognition of her tenacity. "What do I have to gain?" he sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. For the first time, he considered the thread connecting them. A cleaner, a millionaire. On the surface, it was a ridiculous partnership. But beneath it lay a thread of empathy, a shared struggle that neither had fully acknowledged. He felt the corners of his mind tightening, criticizing him for considering her insights, for being pulled into a world where vulnerability overshadowed wealth. "Jackson?" Sarah's voice sliced through his thoughts. She stood, clutching a dish towel, a flicker of determination lighting her eyes. "We need to talk." His gaze met hers, and for a brief moment, he felt her quiet strength anchor him. "What exactly do you want from me?" he asked, the defensive edge in his tone unmistakable. Her breath caught for an instant, but she steadied herself. "I want to help you find what you've lost yourself, your purpose." The fire in her voice surprised him. "You've built this life around what others expect of you. But that's not who you are, Jackson. And it's certainly not what your father wanted." The atmosphere crackled with newfound energy as her words took root within him. He leaned forward, confusion battling with the stirring embers of defiance. "And how am I supposed to do that? With your cleaning tips? What do you know about running a company? About building a legacy?" Sarah squared her shoulders, her resilience surging through every fiber of her being. "I know about survival. I know about hard work and scraping by, but I also know what it feels like to stand up against doubt. And maybe there's more to life than what we're told. We both are stuck, searching for what's next." Those words reverberated in Jackson's mind, so profoundly that they felt like a revelation. What was he chasing? In his relentless pursuit of approval, he had lost sight of his own aspirations. Sarah's challenge awakened something buried deep within, a desire not only to reclaim his identity but to forge a path that mattered to him. "Let us give this a chance," he murmured, a tentative commitment taken over by his breath. "But how do we start?" Sarah's heart raced, hope igniting her determination. "You need to confront your father's expectations, not just for yourself, but to define who you really want to be." But the thought of facing the man who loomed so fully in his past sent a chill through him. Could he truly confront those shadows and stand tall in the light of authenticity? As apprehension mixed with a surge of purpose, Jackson verified an unavoidable truth that gripped him tight: the journey wouldn't just reshape his life, it would reshape Sarah's as well. And as the storm outside shifted gears, so did the storm brewing within them, each carving a path deeper into the unknown. The doorway to personal transformation was ajar. Facing his past loomed ahead, and he understood in that moment that the battle wasn't just external. It lay within. The challenge would begin. Would he dare to face the storm brewing within himself? As Jackson sat on the couch, his heart raced in sync with the thunder rumbling outside. The storm outside mirrored the tempest within him, a chaotic mix of both dread and an unbidden thrill. Sarah's words echoed in his mind, not just an invitation to confront his father's shadow, but a challenge that hinted at a deeper transformation. Could he really unveil the layers he had built around himself for so long? The thought sent shivers down his spine, but the flicker of courage ignited by Sarah's determination urged him to consider the impossible. "All right," he said finally, a hint of resolve taking shape. "Let us figure this out together." Sarah's expression brightened, but Jackson quickly doused the flicker of hope in her eyes. "But this is going to be uncomfortable. I'm not here to just polish the surface of my problems. I need to dig deeper." "Deep is where we'll find the good stuff," she replied, determination softened by compassion. You don't have to hide any longer. Jackson took a deep breath, frustration bubbling within him. But what if I don't know what lies beneath? What if there's nothing good to find? Then we'll face that together. Her unyielding gaze struck a chord within him. Her tone wasn't that of an overzealous optimist, it resided in the realm of someone who had endured her own battles. He leaned back, exhaustion creeping into his bones. What if he had lost more than just a sense of self? What if his relentless drive to please his father led to a life where his own passions languished in the shadows? Screw it, he murmured, half to himself. I can't keep pretending. Sarah watched him closely, sensing the weight of the pivotal moment. So what is the first step? She prodded gently, her voice breaking through the guilt that clung to him like humidity. You mentioned confronting expectations, he said, his voice steadier now. Let's start with that. But I don't want to do it like a child seeking approval. I want to reclaim my voice. Her nod affirmed his intent. You need to be honest with him, even if that honesty is laced with fear. Remember this: your worth isn't measured by his perception of success. Taking the first step felt daunting, akin to staring down an abyss. Yet, for the first time in years, Jackson felt invigorated by the prospect of change. You've got to be by my side, he stated. I don't know how to have this conversation alone. The last thing I want is to fall into old patterns. Sarah smiled softly, a grounding presence in his spiraling thoughts. I'm here for you. We can script it together. As they ventured into drafting what he would say, Jackson discovered an unexpected wellspring of emotion stirring inside him. Anger, disappointment, and regret all coursed through him freely. It felt frightening but liberating. He pulled his chair closer to the table where Sarah had laid out pen and paper. Maybe I've been angry for a long time, he admitted, his voice dropping. I've allowed my life to be dictated by others while all the while believing I was just being responsible. Being responsible can suffocate, she countered, her expression earnest. You have to carve out space for yourself amidst those expectations. Jackson began to write, the words flowed from somewhere deep within. Each phrase represented a piece of him he had subdued for far too long. He felt a growing warmth, as though he were gaining comprehension through articulation. The unearthed anger began to shape itself into clarity, revealing a voice he never knew he possessed. The storm outside shifted once more, easing slightly as an unexpected calm flooded the room. In that moment of newfound resolve, the task ahead no longer seemed insurmountable. I am ready to step into the storm with you, Sarah, he said, his tone firm and unwavering. Not just in confronting my father but in determining who I truly want to be. And while we're at it, I want to help you confront your doubts, too. The twinkling of shared ambition settled between them like an unspoken pact. New paths unfurled before them, vibrant with potential. But as the anticipation grew, an unsettling question lingered: was he truly able to withstand the scrutiny that awaited? In the depths of their preparation, they knew they were setting out for something greater than themselves. The question remained, how would they emerge from the storm on the other side? Jackson woke the next morning to the remnants of the storm still haunting the skyline. Raindrops clung to the window like moments he wished to forget, each beat a reminder of his unsteady resolve. As he sipped his coffee, he felt a strange mix of hope and anxiety stirring within him. What if today was the day he finally stepped into his truth? The agenda loomed heavy on his mind. He knew the confrontation with his father was imminent. Each passing moment felt like an uninvited countdown. Jackson took a moment to gather his thoughts, reaching for the notepad where he had jotted down fragments of what he wanted to say. The lines blurred between raw honesty and the fear of being misunderstood. But deep down, he leaned toward the realization that he had to risk discomfort for the sake of clarity. As he rehearsed in solitude, word after word infused him with courage. His voice echoed back, revealing how starch and distant his usual self sounded. This had been a voice crafted for hiding and appeasing, not one molded for assertiveness. Although the prospect of being vulnerable frightened him, it gradually morphed into a compelling desire to break away from the suffocating grip of expectations. Setting out to meet Sarah, his resolve solidified. She was more than just a partner in this endeavor, she had become a catalyst for his growth. Upon his arrival, he saw her pacing the small cafe where they had met previously. The sight of her unwavering spirit emboldened him. "Good morning. Ready for the next step?" Sarah's voice was laced with both enthusiasm and empathy. Jackson nodded, trying to mask the tremor in his hands. "I've been thinking about what I need to say. I want to own my story. No more justifications. I'm proud of you. Remember, it's not about seeking approval. You have the right to express your feelings and your voice matters," she encouraged, her sincerity washing over him like a soothing balm. They sat at a corner table, the cafe bustling around them, yet it felt as if they were in their own world. They drew out the pieces he had written, arranging them into a coherent dialogue. The act of crafting each line was invigorating, a cathartic exercise transforming fragmented thoughts into powerful affirmations. This is more than just a conversation with him, Jackson realized aloud. It's a declaration of who I am. Exactly, she replied, eyes sparkling with understanding. You're standing up not only for yourself but also renouncing the idea that you have to fit into a mold. You're claiming your right to pursue the life you want. But what started as an empowering session soon turned daunting as Jackson's memories of interactions with his father resurfaced. They were choppy, raw, spiraling into resentment he thought he had buried. The hard truth struck him, this conversation could unleash emotions that felt too big to contain. I don't want to get emotional, but I can't ignore this feeling that if it gets too intense, I might revert back to that eager-to-please child, he confessed, uncertainty creeping into his tone. Then we prepare for that too. Acknowledge your feelings, let them come up, but don't let them control you. Stick to your script but also allow space for the unexpected, Sarah reassured. As the afternoon wore on and their dialogue evolved, he suddenly stopped. An epiphany crashed through the fog of his apprehensions. It wasn't just about confronting his father, it was about confronting every part of himself that had remained hidden, neglected. There was an empowering potential in this vulnerability. I want to be authentic, not just to him but to myself. If I don't embrace my truth, then what is the point? Yes. That's the crux of it, she affirmed, her voice rising with excitement. Embracing your truth doesn't make you weak, it makes you whole. Jackson's heart raced anew, but this time in anticipation of the impending confrontation, no longer solely in fear. The chaos within began to solidify into purpose, urging him onward. As they finalized the outline of his speech, he felt a half-formed dread. What if it turns volatile? He whispered half to himself. Then we handle it together, Sarah promised. Encouraged yet apprehensive, he realized they were not merely preparing for a conversation. They were igniting a personal revolution. The journey wouldn't be easy, but stepping away from a life lived in shadows felt exhilarating. However, a lingering tension hovered. Was he truly ready to unravel the tightly wound expectations? As they gathered their things, he sensed a crossroads ahead. Would he step into this new horizon or retreat into the familiar but stifling darkness? Tomorrow would hold the answer. The sun rose the next morning, casting warm pools of light across Jackson's small apartment, a stark contrast to the battles raging within him. Today felt monumental, a day when he would challenge notions he had quietly endured for far too long. He observed his reflection in the bathroom mirror. This was not just about his father, it was about his own personal odyssey towards self-acceptance. Jackson dressed meticulously, each article of clothing serving as a reminder of his determination. He intended to look the part of someone who was ready to confront his past, a move that felt long overdue. Pulling on a blazer, he felt more like a stranger suiting up for a role than the protagonist of his own life. Yet, this persona provided a layer of armor, and he clung to it. With his pulse quickening, Jackson stepped outside, inhaling deeply the crisp morning air, an empowering ritual that grounded him. Each breath filled him with a sense of purpose and clarity, attributes that had felt elusive in his darker moments. The sky held no threat today, just an open canvas ready for him to paint his decisions upon. The drive to his father's house was fraught with tension, memories flooding back unwelcome moments of disappointment, expectations thrust upon him like an invisible weight. It dawned on Jackson, his father might not react the way he hoped. What if their history bound him to misunderstanding? Paralyzing fear suffused him, attempting to drag him back. But no. He had prepped for today. Upon arrival, he took a moment to center himself in the car. He visualized the outcome, picturing a conversation that broke the cycle. Would restraint yield clarity, or would anger reignite in the old familiar fashion? Jackson wasn't just revving himself up for an external confrontation but also wrestling with an internal dialogue marked by self-doubt. His father greeted him outside, looking as stern as ever, a granite face carved by years of expectations. The air felt electric as they exchanged pleasantries. Each word shared felt like stepping on a tightrope stretched over uncertainty. Jackson could hear his heart hammering in the silence that crept between them. "Let us sit down," his father instructed, leading him to the living room. Jackson accepted the invitation, but his nerves were fraying. As he settled onto the couch, the well-worn furniture radiated safety, yet he felt exposed, like an artist unveiling a canvas before a critic. "Everything all right with you?" His father asked. It was a banal question that charged the space with tension, each syllable felt like digging a deeper pit. Jackson felt the weight of the moment. He couldn't trivialize this. "Actually, I need to talk to you about how I feel." Time paradoxically froze and accelerated at once. The words hung in the air, foreboding yet liberating. His father's brow furrowed, a frown etched into the fabric of their relationship. "About what?" came the guarded response. Jackson took a deliberate breath. This was the moment that would crack the facade. "About our relationship. I feel like I've always tried to live up to what you wanted, and I want to be honest about who I am." The silence that followed was almost tangible. He could feel layers shifting not just in the room but within himself, as if he were peeling back a second skin. Jackson continued, his voice solidifying with newfound conviction, "I want you to know that I can no longer just be the son you expect me to be. I have my own dreams, my own road to follow." But it was deeper than that. Jackson was declaring his independence, and with that declaration came an intense surge of determination, as if all the hidden power within him coalesced and surged forward. He was breaking free, unshackling the chains of expectation, and for the first time, he anticipated his father's reaction with guarded hope rather than fear. However, against the backdrop of his affirmation, dread loomed. Would his father understand? Would that hidden power be powerful enough to pave the way for acceptance? Jackson awaited the storm of words that could follow, heart thumping powerfully in his chest. That second stretched into eternity, only the whir of the clock punctuated the charged air. What would his father say? This tension was not merely a moment, it was the intersection between the son he had been and the man he was determined to become. Everything hung in the balance. Jackson took another steadying breath. Was he ready to face the fallout if the answer wasn't what he hoped? In that suspended second, he questioned whether he was ready not just to confront his father but to confront parts of himself that had for too long remained silent. And then, the answer began to unfold before him, like the prelude to a storm ready to break open. Jackson's heart raced as he faced his father. A fleeting thought crossed his mind: how had he arrived at this moment, poised on the edge of a precipice, confronting a legacy that felt not like empowerment but like a burden? The living room felt stifling, thick with tension, holding its breath along with him. His father's eyes narrowed, assessing him with the sharp scrutiny that had always made Jackson feel like a project. "You think this is some sort of game?" The words sliced through the air, a provocative cut that demanded attention. Jackson flinched, bracing himself against the expected wave of disappointment. Steadying his breath, he pushed past the instinct to retreat. Each syllable felt more grounded than the last. "No, Dad. It's not a game. It's my life." There it was, he had named the fear out loud. The space between them shimmered with the force of unspoken truths. His father's shoulders tightened. "You think just saying that changes anything?" Reality doesn't shift just because you feel a certain way. Disapproval dripped from every word, reminding Jackson of moments past when he sought validation that was never freely given. He could fold into an old familiar pattern: deflection, silence, compliance. But instead, he felt another surge of determination ripple through him. "I'm not asking for approval. I'm asking for understanding," Jackson asserted, tapping into a new reservoir of strength. The years of stifled conversation, masked feelings, and unfulfilled expectations pressed heavily on him like the weight of a rock tumbling toward its rest. In that weight, he found solidity. "Understanding?" His father scoffed, disbelief evident in the curl of his lip. "And what am I supposed to understand? That you'll just abandon everything we worked for?" Jackson's heart sank, the old familiar ache squeezing at his chest. "I'm not abandoning anything. I'm figuring out what I want. It's different." The fight in him rose like an unquiet tide, fueled by years of pretending and hiding. "Different? You think those choices are easy?" His father's voice rose, shaking the very foundations of their interaction. Each rebuff was a puzzle piece reinforcing the walls around them, and here was Jackson standing defiantly before the edifice, hungering for real connection. "Yes, I do. You always made decisions based on what you thought was best for me without asking what I wanted. That's what I need you to understand." The room pulsed with the heavy energy of his declaration. The thought of going back to silence felt unbearable. Instead, Jackson hungered for the unpredictable turn of tides in their relationship. For a moment, his father's expression flickered, a hint of something: recognition, perhaps. Jackson seized that moment, rushing forward, his voice barely contained as he shared how he had longed to create his own career path, to chase his passions without the shadow of expectations looming over him. "Do you even see me, Dad? It doesn't have to be this way," he pleaded, his voice wavering but determined. "I'm ready to be seen." Silence settled again, but this time it was charged with anticipation. What would his father say? Jackson stood at the precipice of hope, both terrified and exhilarated. His future seemed to shimmer into view, but first, he needed a response. The fact that he had spoken his truth ignited something in him he could not ignore. No matter the outcome, he had finally voiced his need for connection, for acceptance. Yet, would his father's response bridge the expanse between them? The seconds stretched once more, the clock in the background ticking ominously. Jackson's breath hitched as his father's gaze softened, but would it translate into understanding, or would it unravel into more of the same? As he awaited his father's response, he felt an undeniable shift within himself, a readiness to embrace the unknown, a longing for transformation. If confronting his father was a storm, perhaps it could also be the cleansing rain. Would he find clarity on the other side? The room held its breath for what came next, and despite the uncertainty, Jackson understood one vital truth: he was no longer just a boy seeking approval but a man claiming his narrative. The question remained: would his father join him in this newfound journey, or would he turn back toward the past? Time stretched painfully in the dim light of the living room. Jackson's heart beat in his ears, the anticipation mingling with a lingering fear of rejection hanging heavily in the air. He watched his father's face, an impassive mask that slowly began to reveal cracks, uncertainty creeping in where determination had been firm. "Understanding," his father finally spoke, voice strained, as if each word carried the weight of years lost. "Perhaps I've missed what you need all this time." There was an unexpected vulnerability in his tone that held Jackson captive. Jackson's breath caught. Could he dare to hope? Yet, beneath the initial rush of optimism lay a nagging resistance. Did his father's willingness to see him come without conditions? Jackson sensed a fragile bridge emerging between them, but the hesitance of past conversations lingered in the edges of the moment. Pushing forward with a cautious optimism, Jackson replied, "It's not about ignoring our history. It's about understanding it, understanding me." He felt the pieces of himself coalescing. The more he spoke, the more he sensed his own desires sharpening into focus. His father's brow furrowed. "Never in my life did I think I was trying to impose. I only wanted to prepare you for the best." Best for whom, Dad? The question tumbled out, raw and unfettered. Jackson had spent too long buried in the expectations of others. You can't decide what's best for me without asking me what I want. The old, familiar rift opened again, but this time, Jackson had his footing. Each word became a deliberate act of reclaiming his narrative. He was no longer standing on that precipice, wavering, he was stepping forward. Have you considered what I want to do with my life? Truly considered it? Jackson pressed, his eyes unwavering. He marveled internally at the unexpected strength surging through him, a strength he wasn't sure he possessed until this very moment. The silence felt weighty again, the air thick with unspoken truths. Jackson watched his father grapple with the challenge, the initial sternness gradually giving way to a flicker of acceptance, calculated though it was. Here, for perhaps the first time, Jackson felt he was being regarded as an equal partner in the dialogue. I don't know what to say. This is all unexpected, his father finally replied, shaking his head in disbelief. You cannot simply define your path without consequences. Jackson nodded, feeling the edginess of his father's belief in consequence but also sensing the shift in their dynamic. Then help me understand those consequences. Let us go forward from here, together. A new flicker ignited in Jackson a realization that their evolution need not be a solitary journey. He wasn't just looking for his father's acceptance, he was inviting him to participate in his transformation. That small thought, the concept that both could grow together, propelled Jackson further. But he knew the hardest part was yet to come. How would his father respond to this invitation? Would he retreat into old ways, or would he step into this new realm of possibility? As moments stretched, Jackson could feel the air crackle with the electric potential of change. For so many years, he had been trying to navigate the labyrinth of his father's expectations and perceptions, but now he was trying to draw a map for mutual understanding. Just then, his father softened again, a veneer of gentleness cracking through his stoicism. Jackson leaned closer, ready for the words that would either affirm his hopes or push him back into shadows. All right, son. If we're going to do this, let us really explore what you want. But know this, it's not going to be easy. You need to face what truly drives you. Jackson's heart soared and crashed at once. On one hand, his father's willingness to engage offered a glimpse of what could be. On the other, the implications of that engagement loomed dauntingly. I'll hold you to that, Jackson replied, his nerve strengthening. But I'll also take responsibility for every choice I make from here on out. With that resolve, he knew the road ahead would be riddled with new challenges, and the terrain of their relationship required careful navigation. Would they remain united, or would past grievances find a way to tear them down? The doorway to a new chapter in their lives stood ajar, yet the outcome felt uncertain. Jackson could feel the challenges creeping toward them, dark and alluring, ready to test their resolve. The true measure of their emerging bond was yet to be determined, and deep down, he understood they would need to confront the shadows lurking within. What revelations awaited them on this unmarked path, and would they find strength not just in being seen, but in revealing deeper truths? The air was heavy with unspoken words, as Jackson felt the warmth of hope and fear swirling in equal measure. Just a flicker of acknowledgement between him and his father had provided a new perspective, a promise of change. Yet, beneath that flicker, the weight of their past and the enormity of the road ahead loomed larger than ever. Let us start with what truly drives me, Jackson said, the resolve in his voice carrying an urgency he hadn't felt before. This wasn't just about their conversations anymore, it was about crafting a narrative that belonged to him, one that he would not cede to anyone else, not even his father. Choosing his words carefully, Jackson leaned into the uncertainty. I don't want to go back to the person I was before, unsure, always living for someone else's expectations. I need my own voice. He could feel the tremor of vulnerability in the air, yet it was liberating. His father remained silent, the internal battle of acceptance playing out behind his steady facade. Jackson's gaze darted around the familiar living room, its well-worn furniture providing a stark contrast to the tempest brewing within him. Here, they were both anchored in history, a history he longed to redefine. Let us lay it all on the table, Jackson pushed forward. What are we avoiding? What do you see ahead for me, and what is holding you back? His eyes met his father's steadfast stare, a battle of wills framed in that moment. As if grappling with the revelation, his father shifted in his chair. It's not that simple, Jackson. What I see is not what you want. It's a fear of watching you fail, of letting you go into the unknown. Jackson felt the ache of that admission. It was a double-edged sword, cutting sharply at defenses he'd worked hard to build. Failure is part of growth. I can't learn without it. His father's silence indicated deep contemplation, but a part of Jackson was impatient. How long were they to linger in this swirling ambiguity? Encouraged, he pressed on, I need to create. I want to write, to inspire their essay whole world of stories I haven't told yet. A cautious expression crossed his father's face, a mixture of pride and concern. Writing, son? You think that essay stable path? Jackson could feel the wave of skepticism wash over him. No, but it's my path. If success means wealth to you, then I'll succeed differently. My success will be finding my truth and sharing it. The realization jolted through Jackson. This was a pivotal moment not just for them, but for him as an individual. The internal conflict sparked a recognition of his own abilities. The power of his words could shape not only his future but potentially impact others' lives. Yet behind that fierce determination lay a shadow of doubt. Was he truly equipped for the emotional landscape that came with exposing his soul on paper? The prospect sent a shiver of vulnerability through him, and he grappled with the fear of inadequacy that lurked at the edges of his ambition. His father finally spoke, voice low but steady. Your ambition is admirable, but it's also dangerous. You're entering a realm filled with critiques and challenges I can't protect you from. Jackson swallowed hard, feeling the tension in his throat. It's not about protection. It's about accountability. I want to be the author of my life, not just a character defined by my lineage or expectations. And if you fail? His father challenged, the weight of his worry sewn into each syllable. If I fail, Jackson paused, forcing himself to embrace the discomfort, I'll learn. But if I succeed, I'll know I fought for something that mattered. His words hung in the air, both a promise and a challenge. The back and forth was electrifying. Each conversation now felt like a chess match where vulnerability was both the pawn's and the king's. As silence enveloped them once more, Jackson sensed that this was only the beginning. A decision loomed over them silently, one that required both introspection and bravery. What if he stumbled upon a hidden talent for captivating storytelling along the way, or worse, discovered truths that sent their relationship into disarray? Jackson leaned forward, voice strong but vulnerable. I need you to stand with me, Dad, even if it means facing the unknown together. In that moment, Jackson couldn't foresee where they would end up, nor could he ignore the shifting tides of this evolving relationship. Each question demanded courage, and each confrontation pushed him closer to revelations he had yet to uncover about both himself and his father. As the boundaries between insecurity and ambition blurred, Jackson's next step crystallized in his mind. It wouldn't just be a negotiation of their relationship, it would require the unearthing of hidden complexities and desires. Would they channel their courage into connecting through creation, or would the specters of past fears threaten to consume them? Whatever lay ahead demanded an unmistakable resolve, one that Jackson was only beginning to grasp. He stared at his father, heart racing with anticipation of what could follow. Are we ready for this? A spark ignited, one that would either light their path to understanding or plunge them into deeper shadows yet to be explored. Would this journey of word and narrative bring enlightenment, or would the abyss of their past threaten to pull them under? Jackson sat in the aftermath of their conversation, the silence heavy yet filled with possibilities. The tremors of uncertainty and hope ran through him like a flickering light bulb, illuminating the path ahead. What then? His mind was a whirlpool, pulling him deeper into thoughts of purpose and the stories he yearned to share. He rose from the worn chair, the creak of the wood echoing his own internal struggle. How was he to channel his thoughts into writing? The blank pages loomed in his mind, each assertion of ambition drowned out by a chorus of self-doubt. Creating required not only skill but also the courage to expose vulnerabilities, a thought that sent a shiver down his spine. Jackson, he mentally chastised himself, start small. Just right. You've always wanted this. As if summoned by his very thoughts, he reached for his battered notebook. Flipping through the pages, he found half-finished thoughts, snippets of stories he had jotted down amidst fleeting moments of inspiration. They were reminders of unpolished ideas that hinted at a voice seeking to break free. His father's concerns echoed in his mind. Writing was an unstable path. But he wouldn't allow that fear to dictate his journey. He felt an urgency to write something real, something that could resonate. That was the goal, to connect through words, to share pieces of himself in hopes of finding common ground with readers. Closing his eyes, he envisioned the stories he wanted to tell. Characters bustling through vivid landscapes, struggles echoing his own experiences, triumphs clad in sweat and realization. Each moment he wrote could breathe a new life into both him and his readers. But self-exposure could lead to shattering vulnerability. What if others didn't understand? What if they judged? Would it matter? He whispered into the quiet room, allowing a flicker of rebellion to arise against fear's chokehold. Wouldn't those judgments be a sign that he was living authentically? With a sudden burst of determination, he plunged his pen onto the page, crafting words not for accolades but for the catharsis it brought him. The ink flowed with each scratch against the paper, hearts paved not in ink but in breath. It was exhilarating yet terrifying, and he let the fear surge alongside his passion. Hours melted away as he delved deeper into his initial pieces. The act of writing became both a shield and a sword. He confronted the shadows of his past, memories of inadequacy and the weight of expectation, and rendered them into narratives that demanded authenticity. Each line molded a new shape of resilience, and for the first time, he sensed a burgeoning confidence within. As night enveloped the world outside, the living room transformed into a sanctuary. Familiar walls, once a reminder of his father's skepticism, now cradled a realm of potential. Here, he could create. He was both the architect and the spirit behind the stories, but beneath the surface of this burgeoning empowerment, a tempest still churned. His father's disapproval lingered like a stubborn stain. What would happen when Jackson revealed his newfound creations? Would it ignite pride or skepticism? Perhaps they were both treading the same emotional terrain, fraught with uncertainty and evolving expectations. That he pushed on, drafting tales that confronted personal dilemmas and showcased raw emotions. Each narrative pulled him closer to a truth he'd never been bold enough to claim before. He was the master of his own journey. As he paused to sip a lukewarm mug of coffee, it occurred to him that this was only the beginning. His path would require not only the willingness to write but an acknowledgement of the potential repercussions. Creating meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant risking rejection. A thought crystallized. What if he penned an article or a series that encapsulated his experiences with his father, exploring their complicated dynamics through the lens of storytelling? It could be a stepping stone, a way to bridge the chasm between them. With adrenaline coursing through him, Jackson grabbed another page. Drafting the first lines of this new work seemed like a surge of electricity. But with that electric charge also came fear. What if the result of his writing pushed them apart instead of bridging their divide? Would he expose wounds that were better left hidden? As he navigated this nascent journey of storytelling, the glimmers of doubt intertwined with the thread of ambition. He could feel the stakes rising with each word, like a tightrope walker precariously balanced high above the ground. Is it worth risking the relationship? He pondered, the question hovering heavy in his mind. With his pen poised over the page, he understood that every risk imbued with uncertainty could serve as a catalyst for deeper understanding. Would this exploration of their relationship unearth revelations or add more layers to their existing challenges? Jackson took a deep breath. This was his moment. He was ready to dive deeper into the truths waiting to be uncovered. Would the words he crafted illuminate both his life and his father's? Or would they unveil truths that were too uncomfortable to confront? The answers lay hidden in the ink, waiting to be discovered. As Jackson immersed himself in his writing, the world outside drifted away. Each keystroke became a revelation, a cathartic purge of emotions long trapped beneath layers of expectation. The stories flowed, intertwining fragments of his childhood, his father's expectations, and his own evolving identity. He no longer feared this new beginning, instead, he embraced it, recognizing that vulnerability lay at the heart of true connection and understanding. After several weeks, Jackson felt ready to share his work, a collection of essays that candidly articulated his personal experiences and views on their complicated father-son dynamic. The confrontation of his own truths bled into the pages, offering insights that he hoped would resonate not just with himself but with his father as well. With a steel resolve, Jackson arranged to meet his father at that same cafe where he first expressed his desire for independence. This time, however, the air was charged with purpose and hope rather than trepidation. As they settled into a corner table, the atmosphere felt different. "I've been working on something," Jackson began, the apprehension simmering just beneath his calm exterior. His father raised an eyebrow, curiosity flickering in his gaze. Pulling out his printed essays, Jackson took a deep breath. "These are stories about us, about the choices we've made, the misunderstandings that have shaped our relationship. I want you to read them." His pulse quickened as he handed the pages over, the stakes palpable now more than ever. Jackson watched as his father scanned the first few lines, and then the silence stretched. For a moment, it seemed as though time itself was holding its breath. The words in Jackson's pieces reflected struggles that were far from perfect, revealing the raw edges of his journey. He had inverted the expectations, choosing to lay bare the wants beneath the facade of success. Finally, his father lowered the pages, transforming scrutiny into contemplation. "You wrote these?" There was incredulity in his tone, mingled with something warmer, perhaps admiration. With each moment of clarity that passed, Jackson felt a flicker of hope illuminate within his chest. Had he managed to bridge the chasm that had long separated them? "Yes," Jackson replied, swallowing the lump in his throat. "This is who I am and what I've experienced, and it feels important for us to talk about it." His father inhaled slowly, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I had no idea you felt this way. I always thought I was offering you opportunities to succeed." "And I appreciate that," Jackson interjected. "But success can't be defined solely by material riches or societal approval. It's about fulfillment and understanding who we really are. I want us to walk that path together." Jackson's words stirred something in his father, a shift in perspective that had been too long in coming. "Do you really believe we can change this? That I can change?" his father asked, vulnerability creeping into his steady tone. "I have to believe we can," Jackson replied, determination coursing through him. "This isn't just about the past, it's about figuring out the future, how we can redefine what it means to be family." As they sat in the cafe, threading through intricacies and unveiling fears, Jackson felt solid ground underfoot. Each shared truth imbued him with profound confidence. He knew now that the act of revealing oneself bore tangible power. The opportunity to forge a genuine connection lay within their reach. His father leaned back, the tension in his shoulders visibly easing. "It's going to take time, this one, to be easy. But I want to understand what you need." Jackson smiled, his heart swelling with unanticipated pride. "I want us to redefine our relationship where we're equals, where we can discuss our goals openly. I won't pretend anymore, and I hope you won't either. And together, we'll confront our fears," his father offered, nodding, an alliance forming as if both were stepping out from behind old masks. The journey they both now recognized required courage to face the unknown and commitments to foster authentic growth. Yet here they were, two men willing to venture into the unfamiliar, ready to rewrite the narratives underlying their lives. Hours passed, and conversation flowed freely as reassuring warmth wrapped around them, thick with promise. Jackson felt the weight of doubt lift, replaced with the joyful anticipation of transformation. Months later, Jackson stood in his apartment, the sun bathing his previously shadowed corners in bright light. Alongside his father, they had forged a new relationship, one built on mutual respect and honesty. The stories Jackson had penned became a published collection, resonating with readers far and wide. Yet it was the personal growth he cherished most, that he had finally achieved, not merely recognition as an author but a deeper understanding of his own voice. What's more, He could see his father beginning to embrace his own dreams on a path he had once thought impossible, and as Jackson gazed out the window, the future unfolded before him, vibrant and inviting, a testament to what can be achieved when one chooses to stand in their own truth. Now, it was time to reach out and share their growth with others, to inspire those grappling with similar complexities, forging connections through authenticity. Jackson's next journey awaited one not just in writing, but human experience itself. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. And let us know your reactions and theories about this impactful ending in the comments. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.